All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Danielle over at the Weather Service. I'm going to give you the ability to unmute yourself if somebody could just confirm that you can hear me again.
Good, Danielle.
We can hear you.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, we will go ahead and get started then. So we're going to be mainly talking about the heavy rain threat associated with this tropical disturbance that's currently located over the Florida Peninsula and forecast to move into the Gulf later this week. The key takeaway here is that regardless of any development, we do have a heavy rain threat with multiple rounds of heavy rain during the Wednesday through Sunday time frame. Right now, it looks like the greatest threat of heavy rain locally will be during the Thursday-Friday time frame. And what that means as far as impacts is concerned is we're likely to see overwhelmed drainage capacity at times with these high rainfall rates. So street flooding is likely at times, and at least a localized flash flood threat will exist. If we do start to see some of the higher end rainfall totals, and we'll talk more about that, we could see more significant flash flooding, especially if there isn't sufficient time between rounds of rain to allow that drainage to catch up. So, come on, computer. Sorry, y'all. All right, so just to recap, as far as the tropical disturbance is concerned and the chance of development, right now, still only looking at a 40% chance of tropical cyclone development as the disturbance moves through the northern Gulf. Right now, as I mentioned, it is currently over the Florida Peninsula, and the biggest question is what it's going to look like when it moves into the Gulf. So once it moves into the Gulf, likely sometime early tomorrow, the forecast should become a little bit clearer. What I want to stress here, though, is that there's really no indication right now that this thing is going to intensify quickly or get its act together very quickly. So even if it does develop, the most likely scenario is a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm. So again, doesn't look like a super big wind threat kind of issue. We really do want to focus on the rainfall threat with this. So here's your 7-day threat outlook. I briefly wanted to just touch on the whole heat index issue for today and tomorrow. We do have heat advisories in effect. Tomorrow we have another heat advisory in effect, but once that rain starts and the heat indices start to come down, we'll likely cancel that a little bit early. But as far as that heavy rain threat is concerned, you can see it starts to move in kind of tomorrow afternoon with the greatest threat Thursday and Friday, and then it should taper off again. The threat on Saturday and Sunday is going to be conditional on how much rain falls Thursday and Friday, because we don't have a lot of heavy rain in the forecast Saturday and Sunday right now. It's just if the ground is already saturated, then any additional rain would quickly run off. So it really is conditional on what happens Thursday and Friday. And again, unless the system strengthens significantly more than forecast, we're not looking at a wind or coastal flood threat. So here's the excessive rainfall outlooks for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so you can see that by Thursday, that heavy rain threat will be moving into coastal areas. Friday, kind of the whole area with the greatest threat closest to the Atchafalaya River. And then by Saturday, that low should be moving inland, and the main threat should be shifting kind of to the northwestern parts of the area. The biggest concern we have is that these storms are going to be efficient. There's a lot of moisture in the air, so we're going to be talking about rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour, and that's going to easily overwhelm drainage capacity, especially in some urban areas and around underpasses. So be prepared for your typical flash flood spots and street flooding. As far as those rainfall rates are concerned. And then, like I said, that flash flood threat over the weekend is kind of conditional on what happens Thursday and Friday. So what are we talking about rainfall total-wise? Right now, we've got 3 to 6 inches of rain in the forecast from most areas, generally along and south of the I-10-12 corridor, and that's going to be during the whole Wednesday through Sunday time frame, with the heaviest rain falling Thursday and Friday. We're going to be looking at multiple rounds, and the timing of those individual waves is currently uncertain. So unfortunately, we can't tell you exactly when this rain is going to fall, as far as is it going to be mainly during the afternoon, during the overnight. It's going to depend on exactly how that low moves and if any banding structures set up at all. So locally higher amounts are likely, and some storms will be capable of producing 2 to 3 inches of rain in a short period of time. Taking a look at what a higher end rainfall forecast might look like. If we account for reasonable uncertainty and forecast errors, we could see up to 10 inches or a little bit more than 10 inches in some areas. The takeaway on this particular slide is that the values on that map are a reasonable worst case based on the current forecast for each individual location. Okay, we're not likely to see widespread 6 to 8 inches of rain or widespread 8 to 10 inches. These are going to be those localized higher totals. So when we talk about locally higher, these are the values that we're kind of talking about. So that, 10 inches, maybe a little more than 10 inches, that's what we're talking about when we talk about that locally higher. So with that being said, we did issue a flood watch for most of the area, except for Southwest Mississippi. The threat looks a little bit lower there for now. So a flood watch is in effect from 1 p.m. tomorrow through 1 a.m. Saturday. Depending on how things play out, that flood watch may need to be extended. We just really wanted to keep the focus on that Thursday, Friday greatest timing for now. So that's why we didn't go any farther than Thursday night for the time being. I'm sorry, any further than Friday night for the time being. So what is this water going to do once it's on the ground? We can expect some rivers to rise, but because the river crests are so sensitive to exactly where and how quickly that rain falls, we can't really project whether any river flooding will occur. I will say, though, that the rivers are currently at base flow rates or lower, except for the Mississippi. That's a little bit higher. But the threat of significant river flooding is pretty low right now because those rivers are low currently. Coastal flooding also doesn't look like it's going to be an issue. We're in a favorable tide cycle right now. We're in that neap tide cycle with low ranges between low and high tide. So that's going to reduce the coastal flood threat. So I just pulled 2 forecasts for Waveland and Grand Isle just to kind of give you an idea of the ranges. And you can see that that gray shading indicates the uncertainty range in that tide forecast. So even the top end of the uncertainty range is currently still below the minor flood stages. So right now, coastal flooding doesn't look like it's going to be a threat. So in summary, we're still looking at that 40% chance of tropical cyclone development, but the biggest thing to take away is that even if it doesn't develop into anything, we're looking at heavy rain, multiple rounds during the Wednesday through Sunday time frame, greatest threat Thursday and Friday. And so most likely impacts are going to be things like street flooding and localized flash flooding. But if we do start to see some of those higher end forecast or higher end rainfall totals, there could be some more significant flooding. And with that, I am going to give you the ability to unmute again, and that way